So I chose to study the journalist account of Saudi Arabia, and I'm going to touch on press freedom and the dangers that journalists face when working within the region, and the way that the citizens are trying to fight back against its oppressive government. As you know, Reporters Without Borders create an annual press freedom index, and the 2013 visual shows that Saudi Arabia is thought to be in a very dangerous situation. It's the black bit beside China. Compared to Finland and Canada, whose press is really free, and Saudi Arabia's journalism is in a really bad state. So Saudi Arabia is nestled between Turkey, Iran, Egypt and Sudan, a dangerous region for press freedom. In 2013, Saudi Arabia was ranked 163rd out of 179 countries, falling 5 countries from 158th on the 2012 Reporters Without Borders Press Freedom Index. That's largely because areas at that area of the index went up and down in their press freedom. Freedom House gave it a press freedom score of 84 and described its internet and press as not free. In 2005, Saudi Arabia began to enjoy a slightly free press as an attempt at reform in their media began. However, shortly after, the right was revoked. It's important to understand when you look at Saudi Arabia's press that the Saudi Arabian royal family control its government and they place religion at the centre of Saudi culture. Saudi's 1964 press code gave the government the right to interfere with the press if it was believed to be threatening public welfare. Criticisms of Islam, the royal family or the government are not permitted, and it's defined as apostasy, something which we'll come back to later. Journalists in Saudi Arabia are required to adhere to a royal decree. Passed in 1982, it states that they must self-censor when it comes to matters of foreign or national heads of state. This was emphasised again when the law was renewed in 2001. In Saudi Arabia, a 15-member committee is responsible for the financial and editorial matters of each privately owned newspaper, and these members are chosen by the Ministry of Culture and Information. Most of the newspapers in Saudi Arabia are privately owned, but they are subsidised by the government, so therefore it shows the strong political ties between the government and private ownership. A 2012 breakdown of the media in Saudi Arabia shows that 10 Arabic daily newspapers are in circulation, with 4 published English daily newspapers, as well as 14 TV broadcast stations throughout Saudi Arabia. Under basic Saudi law, the media's role is to educate and inspire national unity, therefore popular grievances go unreported. Whilst the majority of press comes under fire if they publish anything critical, a handful of journalists are personally selected by the Ministry of Culture Committee so they can slightly criticise the government, so they give the idea that there's a pluralist view. But these particular journalists still have to operate within certain boundaries. In Saudi Arabia, there are 2 main forms of punishments, which make it dangerous for journalists to operate. The death penalty is handed out when a person is found guilty of apostasy. Apostasy being the abandoning of faith, political party regimes, or the loss of one's principles. Just you can imagine, it's a law that is really kind of difficult to prove one way or another. Another punishment that's common in Saudi Arabia are lashings, which is literally the physical act of whipping a person until it can no longer take the pain. These are usually handed out across 3 sessions so the criminal can survive the punishment. Parental disobedience is a grey area of Saudi law. If a crime has been committed, a parent cannot publicly express support for the defendant or criticism of the judicial system, as this can add months on a prison sentence. We'll come back to that later. The Iranian judicial chief said that some of Iran's judges who were affected by slogans from the outside world do not choose lashings, but in my opinion this is one of the best punishments, especially if it is carried out in public, because the deterrent effect is greater. Saudi government adhere to almost the exact same code as the one existing in Iran, which assigns lashings for offences including 100 lashings for adultery between unmarried couples, 100 lashings for lesbianism, 80 lashings for false accusation, 80 lashings for intoxication, and supposedly up to 200 lashings for apostasy. However, there's one major flaw in this particular code. Article 105 gives judges the freedom to use their own discretion when it comes to handing out punishment. So, even though there is kind of a law and a guideline there, it doesn't mean that judges are going to necessarily stick to it because they've got the freedom to kind of put their opinion on it. With an elasticated concept of criminal legislation under the Al Saud Royals, punishments can fluctuate greatly, and as the 8th most censored country in the world, journalists face a constant struggle with censorship and apostasy, something which Raif Badawi discovered. Badawi founded a website in 2008 called the Saudi Liberals, which was essentially a forum and allowed members of the public to post their own opinions on life in Saudi Arabia under rule by Al Saud. Since its creation, his website was censored. However, he is still being accused of creating and moderating a website that insulted religion and religious officials. For the crime, Badawi faced a 7-year prison sentence with 600 lashings. And if you remember, for apostasy, you're only supposed to get 200 lashings. As previously mentioned, parental disobedience can add months to a sentence. In this case, it did, because Badawi's father appeared on Saudi Arabian TV, basically criticising the sentence that he'd been given, and for doing that, 3 months was added to his sentence. So it's pretty plain to see that the Saudi royals tried to censor all aspects of their media, especially the internet, which is harder to police. Reporters Without Borders compiled an Enemies of the Internet list in March 2012, and Saudi Arabia was listed as one of those countries. They commented on the Saudi Arabian control over the internet, explaining, "We are appalled by this extremely harsh and unfair sentence for which there is absolutely no justification," obviously in reference to the Badawi case. "We urge the Saudi authorities to overturn this conviction and to repeal all the 2007 anti-cybercrime laws with oppressive provisions. Saudi citizens must no longer be threatened for using their right to free speech or the freedom of information." A London blogger has been held in a criminal investigation department after he wrote a controversial piece for a Saudi newspaper. He wrote a piece in support for lifting the ban on women driving in Saudi Arabia. He also wrote a second article, which was published on the 26th of October 2013, titled "When the Mafia Threatens," which criticised the terror in Arab societies for stopping citizens enjoying their fundamental freedoms. This is a really recent case. The Arab Spring was obviously a revolutionary wave of demonstrations across the Arab regions and began in 2010. In short, it was a series of protests that highlighted the suppression within the Arab regimes. I don't really want to go into too much detail about it because, it's obviously it is a big topic on its own. But the effect that had on Saudi Arabia is really important. A second wave of oppression began after the Arab Springs, and as Saudi Arabia began to heavily censor its media again, it's thought that it's a direct relation to this. Citizens continued to fight back against the repression. However, as journalists continued to do so, they published controversial articles, women continued to fight back against sexism, and 5.2 million citizens continued to use Facebook. That's obviously just a snippet of the activism that takes place in Saudi Arabia, but you can see that there is still social unrest within the country. After studying the state of journalism in Saudi Arabia, it's evident that journalists face a difficult task when reporting within the region. Article 105 is particularly poignant because it makes sentencing unfair, and parental disobedience makes appealing sentences pretty much impossible. The press in Saudi Arabia is in a very serious situation as the Al Saud regime continues to censor its media and suppress its people in submission. Whilst there's a small to medium circulation of newspapers in Saudi Arabia, all remain controlled by such committees as the Ministry of Culture and Information. Journalists are heavily punished for publishing anything that is controversial. Ultimately, the royal family, the Al Saud regime, continue to control their population by censoring their media, but it is clear that the people within Saudi Arabia are rebelling against it. As journalists push the boundaries, the Saudi government tighten their reins, which makes the region a very dangerous place for journalists. And then that's just the references that I used.
Okay, thank you very much.